Hi. Today I decided that it would be fun to sit down and take account of my indie eyeshadow palette collection. I'm just gonna give you my thoughts on these 6 brands that are currently sitting on my makeup collection that I would consider indie brands. For that criteria, what I'm going by is basically brands that are operating on a direct-to-consumer model, meaning brands that you cannot buy on a major retailer. These are usually very small operations, have a very direct customer service because they're not large businesses, and again, basically operate with a very small inventory. Very often, production times might be slightly long, so it's more of a bootstraps operation than some of the larger brands that we see. I do think that the fact that you are not selling at a major retailer speaks a lot to where you are in the terms of size of your brand, because those retailers do take a cut of your sales and all of that, and not everybody can afford that. But overall, my experience with indie brands has been really, really, really pleasant. And I think I need to review my math because I think that there are more than 6 brands here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's 8. It's 8 indie brands, okay? We're only talking about eyeshadow. For some of these brands, that's the only type of makeup product that I've tried. So we're just gonna discuss my general thoughts about the eyeshadows in general and which of their types of eyeshadows are my favorite. I hope that you enjoy this video, and I hope that it's helpful in maybe considering what is going to be your next indie brand. Let's get started. Brand number 1 is going to be Lethal Cosmetics, and this is probably the smallest sample size that I'm working with in terms of indie eyeshadows because I only own these 2. This gold eyeshadow, which is a shimmer, and this pink eyeshadow, which is a matte. I'm very, very happy with both formulas, but I am most impressed with the matte. This is a really easy to blend matte eyeshadow that incidentally works really well on the cheeks. I'm very, very impressed with the blendability, the longevity, and the overall quality of Lethal's eyeshadows. There they are both. I really have no complaints about these shadows, and I'm definitely open to trying more, including, of course, the multichromes, including, of course, the holographic shades, even though some reviewers do say that that is not necessarily Lethal's forte. But my introduction to the brand through this matte and this shimmer has been very, very satisfactory, and I definitely am curious to try more. Brand number 2, Glamlight. I didn't have plans to buy a Glamlight palette because honestly, I find some of the packaging rather obnoxious, if I'm honest, but they have been coming out with some of these more fun IP collabs that are a little bit more nostalgic and just generally fun for us. And I had been looking at this Scooby-Doo one, made a lot of comments to my husband, and then he got me this palette for Christmas. This is a Raw Raggy palette, very green, blue, purple. I've used every shade in the palette, and what I am most impressed with is the shimmer shadow formula. This is like 0 to kapow in no time. Look at that. Look at that, really. No, really, look at it, okay? Glamlight shimmer formula is absolutely spectacular. If you like a good old intense kapow shimmer, definitely take a peek at Glamlight. They do have some interesting formulas here, like this green is actually kind of a putty shade. I used it last week for my St. Patrick's Day look. This purple is also spectacular, and it has some duochrome shifts. You get a lot of fun stuff with Glamlight shadows. There it is. I mean, look at that. The mattes are wonderful. Don't get me wrong. The mattes are very, very well formulated and definitely pack a pigment, but the shimmers are just the most impressive part of their formula. I am definitely open to trying more from Glamlight, especially if the shimmers are gonna be like this. And then, well, I mean, the fact that Giselle, the owner of Glamlight, is either Dominican or half Dominican is definitely a sweetener for me. I love to see a Dominican in the makeup space. So I'm very, very happy to support, and I am delighted that my husband bought me this. Brand number 3, Corazona. This is the only palette that I own from them. This is a Living palette in collaboration with Ratolina. Corazona is from Spain. It's not a brand that, to my knowledge, is very well known in the Americas, but this is the palette that I own from them. I bought it because of the creator. I really enjoy Ratolina's content. If you speak Spanish, I highly recommend following her. She's been on YouTube forever and her content is delightful. If you are more into drugstore makeup, finding dupes and all of that stuff, her content is gonna be right up your alley. But this is the palette that she launched in 2022? 2022 or 2023? No, it was in 2023. My bad. 2023. So I bought it on launch and I've had a lot of fun using this palette. I've traveled a bunch of times with them as, you know, and taken it as my only palette. The matte formula is very easy to work with. It may not be, in my opinion, the most pigmented formula out there, but that means that it's very easy to build up without making a mess. So I would say that the Corazona formula is fairly beginner friendly. So you may want to check it out. Corazona does ship to the US from their website and it is fairly affordable. This, how many shades is this? This is a 20 pan palette and I paid like $25 for it. Not bad. And the shimmers are really fantastic. This shade Urraca, which is a duochrome, you're seeing it blue, I'm seeing it purple, is a spectacular shade. I really like it. For reference, look how translucent that base is too. For reference, Urraca translates to magpie, because you know how it is. Magpies have shiny object syndrome. This other shade called Please, which is also a duochrome, and it's a green that shifts to blue and kind of more brown. I mean, is that really normal to get this kind of shine on a $25 palette? Are you serious? The funny thing is that those are not even my favorite shades in the palette. My favorite shade in the palette is Glossy. Let me show you what Glossy looks like. This is Glossy. That's not true. That's not my favorite shade in the palette. That's my second favorite shade in the palette, but I'm gonna show you what it looks like. There's Glossy. Super transparent base, a perfect like wet look shadow, just beautiful. And if you want a cooler taupe, if you're more into those shades, M, this shade, which is named after Ratolina's cat, on the top right here. Again, I would say a more wet look eyeshadow for someone of my skin tone. Look at these, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So I've had a lot of fun playing with this shimmer duochrome, more wet look shadow kind of formula from Corazona, and my hand is absolutely full of glitter right now. The pressed glitters on this palette have been less impressive to me. They can be worked with, but they definitely require glitter glue. Do not try to put these by themselves on your eyelid. It's going to be a disaster. Those need all the help. You need primer, you need glitter glue, you need all the things to use those pressed glitters. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm kind of surprised that they put 2 pressed glitters in this eyeshadow palette, because Ratolina I feel like she doesn't use pressed glitters as much, but they are there and they can be worked with. They're just not the easiest without help. They definitely need glitter glue, which makes sense. But the rest of the palette is absolutely beautiful. I've enjoyed using it. I travel with it a lot because the packaging is really light and travels really well like in my backpack or in my handbag. So that's one of like my go-to travel palettes, and I'm definitely curious to try more from Corazona in the future. Brand number 4, Altero. This is probably one of the brands that I've been trying for the longest in this group. And at this moment, I only have 2 palettes from them. I have Goddess and I have Shadow Kiss. I had Artemis, but I decluttered it last Christmas. If you haven't seen that declutter video, I'll leave it linked in the corner. Goddess is the color story of the Natasha Denona Gold palette, and Shadow Kiss, and Shadow Kiss is the color story of the Natasha Denona Glam palette. If you're not familiar with Altero, they do that. They do like more affordable versions of very popular color stories. Some brands that they've been doing color stories for lately more frequently have been Huda Beauty and ABH. And which other one? I think that last year was like heavy on Huda Beauty and ABH. I do have my eye on their Coastal palette, which is the color story of the Huda Beauty Rose Quartz palette. I watched Ali Glines' review of that one, and she actually liked the Coastal palette better than Rose Quartz. So I'm just curious. It's out of stock, so I have to wait for the restock. But overall, what do I think about the Alter Ego formula? I'm not gonna come here and tell you that is going to be the same formula as like the palette that it's inspired on. It's not the same. There's absolutely no chance, but it is a decent formula for the price point that you are getting. It is a decent formula for the color stories that they're trying to work with, because some of those pigments are hard to like put together. It is definitely a brand that can provide an alternative to some of those higher end palettes so that more people can have access to those color stories. I personally prefer the mattes formula. Who am I? What is going on? Why am I talking about preferring mattes formulas? What's happening? I personally prefer the Alter Ego matte formula to the Alter Ego shimmer formula. The shimmers tend to be a little bit flaky and what's the word I'm looking for? Chunky for my taste. But I mean, with the proper tools, like with proper blending, they work really well on the eyelid. My favorite from these two is Shadow Kiss, but that's probably because I'm more inclined to using cool tone eyeshadows as it is. I think both of Goddess is, I'm not sure that Goddess is in stock in the Alter Ego website. If it is, I'll link it in the description box, as well as everything that is available from this roundup that I'm showing you. If it's available, I'll link it in the description box. Some of those links may be affiliate links, so just keep an eye out for that. If you do use them and they're affiliate links, I may earn a small commission. I just want to make sure that you know, but they will be marked in the description box as well. Let's keep moving. Brand number 4, Unearthly. Here we go. I've already talked about my thoughts on the Unearthly eyeshadow formula in my video of 4 new brands that I want to try in 2024, which was really 5, and it was actually 6. But since this is the first brand on that list of brands that I wanted to try that I have worked with, I've already shared some of my thoughts there. I got 3 palettes: Fairy Frolic, Not Normal, and Dead of Night. This is my favorite because look at this color story. It's amazing. It's a dream. I love it. I love it so much. And the looks that come out of that, amazing, amazing. I can't with that palette. Not Normal has grown on me. I bought it and then I got it and I was like, am I really gonna use this? Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. And then Fairy Frolic is just a fun one. Honestly, it's a color story that initially you think that is gonna be like hard to put together, but it's actually not. It's a more neutral palette than you think it is. The reason why I bought these 3 is because they were being pulled out of the Unearthly inventory for reformulation. And like I said in my video of new brands, I personally think that Fairy Frolic and Not Normal could use a reformulation. The mattes could be a little bit more blendable and the shimmers could be a little bit more impactful. Dead of Night, I think, has the new formula, but to my knowledge, I think the mattes might still be getting reformulated, but absolutely wonderful palettes. There are still a couple of palettes from Unearthly that I have my eye on. Don't Be Jelly. I want it. I want it so bad. I really, really want it. And I mean, I have the Sleepover palette in the US that I haven't tried. I'm very, very, very excited to try it. It's a brand that I'm following with a lot of interest. And I definitely want to try the lip products and the highlighters as well. Very happy with the quality. I absolutely understand the reformulating issue, but even then, they're great eyeshadow palettes with really, really cool color stories that are very like inspiring. Like it definitely feels like playtime when you're using one of those Unearthly palettes. I've lost count of my brands. Next brand. Sydney Grace. Sydney Grace, it says it there. So I have been keeping my eye on Sydney Grace for a really long time. I finally pulled the trigger last year. I was gonna remove the lethal eyeshadows that I have in this magnetic palette, but I'm not going to. But I am gonna show you all the Sydney Grace eyeshadows that I do have. So I bought 3 multi-chromes. They're right here. I bought a blue shimmer in a single shadow. Either that or I got it with purchase. Everything is purchase here or gift with purchase because I'm no one. I don't get PR, okay? Everything is purchase or gift with purchase. And then the other palettes that I bought were the palettes that were either created by Mel Thompson or inspired by Mel Thompson Curations. So Tiny Marvels, which is the palette that she collabed with Sydney Grace to create. It's a beautiful color story. It really does make me think of a garden. I mean, it is inspired on like bugs, and she was a big bug person. Like she really liked bugs, but the colors are just wonderful. It's a great one if you want soft washes of color because the mattes are a dream to work with. Truly a superior matte formula. And I mean, the shimmers are also really impactful, really easy to work with. You can definitely see something special happening in your eyes. I don't know what to tell you. I wasn't gonna swatch things because now my hand is just full of glitter, but whatever. We come to the indie brand space for the sparkles, I think. I'm just gonna switch. I'm gonna swatch some of the shimmer shades. Okay, here are some of the shimmers. Look at this. I mean, just honestly delicious. This shade, it's called Meadowhawk, is so beautiful because it looks like a sunset. It makes me think of a really fiery sunset, and I love it for that reason. This shade is called, is that Firebuds? No, that's Marvel. This is Firebuds, and this is Scarab, which is a duochrome. These are absolutely beautiful. I love them. I love playing with that palette. It's just colorful and whimsical and dreamy, and I don't know, I feel like a fairy when I wear that palette. I feel like a fairy from a children's book. I absolutely love it. And then the other palette, well, it's not really a palette. I'm calling it a palette because it's a bundle with a purpose. The other bundle that I bought is the Mel's Memory bundle that Sydney Grace released based on this curation that Mel Thompson did when she was reimagining the retro palette from Natasha Denona. This is what she would have done. A big complaint when that palette came out was that there were no greens. So Mel put this out, and then Sydney Grace created a bundle for it. This, I think, is a little bit more everyday, more wearable, softer. The shimmers are not as impactful as what you get in Tiny Marvels or as what you get in the Sydney Grace multichromes, but there are a lot of really easy neutrals here. I use this as an everyday palette all the time. All the time, because the looks honestly make themselves. If you like all matte looks, this is a great one to work with. If you like, you know, these soft peachy pinks, these soft minty greens, I mean, there's just so much to do with this one. Be inventive and creative. I absolutely love this bundle and highly recommend the Sydney Grace eyeshadow formula overall. We have 2 more brands to go. We're gonna move on to Kidos, and we're going to talk about these 4 eyeshadow palettes which are part of their Futurism series. Unfortunately, the Futurism series is discontinued. They retired these palettes from the market, and it's something that you have to keep in mind with indie brands. Indie brands don't keep absolutely everything that they do on rotation. This is the Sashimi City palette from Kidos, a more neutral, softer one. Sometimes indie brands will keep things on their inventory for a while, and then they will retire. They will retire the palettes, and they will be no longer available. So when they said that they were discontinuing the Futurism series, I bought the 4 palettes that were still available. So I just showed you Sashimi City. This is Lunar Lavender. I love this one. It's so pretty. I think you can tell that there are dips here. There are dips in those shimmers because they are truly spectacular. Matte's very easy to work with. I think that Kidos excels at their shimmers. They are a little bit soft, more of that creamy kind of shimmer, and at times those can be a little bit flaky, but just beautiful on the eye. I do recommend with Kidos eyeshadows to do your eyes first if you're gonna use those shimmers, because some of those shimmers do have quite a bit of fallout. Moving on, this is Astro Pink. I think this one's my favorite of all of them, although you would probably not think that if you saw Lunar Lavender. Look at this shade from Astro Pink. Oh, so cool, just so cool. And then this lilac shimmer, there's a similar shade to this in the Mel's Memory bundle on my Sydney Grace eyeshadows. Last, look at those swatches again. Oh, I can't. So much fun putting sparkle in my hands. it's just awesome. Last but not least, oh, this one has a couple of shades that have shattered. Last but not least is Electro Turquoise, that unexpected pop of orange that's actually quite fun. I'm not super keen on orange eyeshadows, but that one is really cool and I use it for kind of like softer washes of color. And then there are a couple of other shimmers, like this one is just a softer shade on the Electro Turquoise palette. Let me get you a slightly more accentuated swatch. I just have to be careful with that shade because it came shattered and it's just never been. Oh, look at that. So awesome. Yeah, Kidos makes really, really interesting eyeshadows. They don't keep their eyeshadow palettes on rotation for a really long time. In fact, the Futurism series was probably the closest that they had to a permanent line of eyeshadows, and now they've been retired. They seem to be moving more in the direction of smaller eyeshadow palettes like quads. I think that their last couple of collections have just been eyeshadow quads as opposed to eyeshadow palettes. So I'm curious to see where they're going in terms of eyeshadows. I also own the Space Age highlighters from Kidos, but this is an eyeshadow video, so that's why we're not talking about those. I do love them. I love them, though. They are awesome. They are so cool and just very modulable. They look scary, but they're very modulable. I should talk about those later. I'll talk about them in my highlighter collection video in April when I'm doing collection videos by product category. I'll talk about the Kidos highlighters then, I promise. But even if you can't get your hands on these, because these are now retired from the Kidos lineup, keep an eye out for Kidos releases. Their formula is solid. The mattes are incredibly easy to work with, very blendable. It's very easy to do like a soft wash of color and still get color payoff, or to build them up and up and up and up and up, which is another one of the great qualities about the Sydney Grace eyeshadow formula, is that you can build those mattes up and up and up and up and up and up and up, and you are still gonna have something very smooth and cohesive. So keep an eye out for what Kidos is doing. I'm very curious to see where their eyeshadow releases are going in the future. Last but not least, we're gonna talk about Glaminatrix. Glaminatrix, okay? All I own from Glaminatrix are metallics. I only own metallics. This is all I've ever bought from them. And I bought the Fairy Lights palette, which they released during the Christmas holiday, I believe. I mean, look at it. How much more festive do you want to go? Seriously, that screams holiday parties. It's all over it. And then I also got the Glimmering Creatures bundle. There are swatches of that bundle on my YouTube shorts where you can go check them out. Incredibly impactful foiled metallics. I'm sorry, my hands are just a glittery mess. I'm not gonna swatch these again. Otherwise, I'm gonna be washing glitter off my hands for the next week. But I would say that Glaminatrix probably makes the most impactful metallics I have ever tried. Just spectacular, spectacular. There is like no look that is not gonna be elevated if you don't bring in a Glaminatrix metallic in there. Seriously. Incredible quality, incredible pigmentation, very easy to work with. Everything that you want in a metallic, these deliver. These deliver. Not to mention, they have great customer service. And I've had a wonderful customer experience with Glaminatrix overall, but I am so, so impressed with those metallics. It's one of those kinds of eyeshadows that I always want to have. I hope that they keep the Glimmering Creatures bundle around in some way, shape, or form, so I can repurchase it, because I use those all the time. I love them. I love them so much. So if you wanted from all of these brands a little bit of like my rankings of sort, I would say that if we're gonna go by type of formula, best mattes, definitely Sydney Grace, best shimmers, Glamlight, best metallics, Glaminatrix, best duochrome, multichrome kind of thing, that's a tough one. I'm not sure that I can decide from these brands, the ones that do have duochromes and multichromes. Let me see. I think that Dead of Night has a duochrome in here. Does it? I think it does. Let's see. Not exactly. I am not, yeah, this one, this green is a duochrome. And that pink is a duochrome, at least a duochrome. So Unearthly has great duochromes there. Corazona, you already saw them, great duochromes here. Sydney Grace, fantastic duochromes, actually multichromes, sorry. The Sydney Grace ones, they're in the bottom, these three. These are multichromes and they are stunning, absolutely stunning. And I don't have multichromes in the Kidos eyeshadows, but I think they make them. But as far as shifty shades, let's call them that way, from these indie brands, I have Sydney Grace, Corazona, and Unearthly. And I think that from what I have, I think Sydney Grace takes the cake. I think you can top those multichromes. They are so, so good. Just, they're just magical. I can't with these things. I can't not show them. I'm sorry. Okay, you are seeing it green. When I turn it, I see it purple. I can't. They have to be swatched. I'm sorry. They have to be swatched. Look at that. It's green, it's pink, it's purple, it's all of the things. It's lilac and kind of latex blue, and it has some silver shift in it. But when I look at it, I saw yellow, green, I'm seeing pink, I'm seeing just all of the things. I messed up that one. This is the green that I use for St. Patrick's Day, but you see some green, yellow, blue, purple. I mean, are you kidding me? It's like, it's just, sorry, the blue snuck in there. It's a color fantasy. It's just so much fun. So if you are, thinking about what multichrome to try, I would say maybe start with Sydney Grace since they sell them as singles. And I mean, it could be an easy way to try one without having to spend a lot of money too, because multichromes can go up there in the price point, and next thing you know, you have like 10 in your cart and mistakes are made for your wallet, not for your eyes. Your eyes are gonna be just fine. It's gonna be a party up there with multichromes, especially if you're using Sydney Grace multichromes. But so I guess that when you look at it, if I had to take one of these brands and say there's one brand to rule them all, I guess I have to say it's Sydney Grace, because they win on the mattes and they win on the shifty shades. The shimmers, I just think that Glamlight does it better. But then again, you see some of the shimmers in Tiny Marvels and they're just so good. I mean, this is all to say, if you are, in the online beauty space and you are hearing so much about indie brands and you're hearing so much about indie eyeshadows and just how innovative the formulas are and just how superior the quality is and just how you are just finding something outside of the ordinary among indie brands, and indie eyeshadows are just, a party. There's a reason behind it, okay? Like some of these brands are like one of the ways in which like makeup has become playtime for me, because there's just so much to discover in terms of formulas. There are so many different color stories. There are so many different textures of eyeshadows, so many different finishes. There's just a little bit of something for everybody, a lot of different price points. So if you are thinking about maybe trying out an indie brand, I would say just be careful. Be careful. I started with 2 single shadows from Lethal that came in a mystery box. And look where we are now. And with that, we're gonna wrap this video up for today. That is my indie eyeshadow roundup as of the spring of 2024. I do have 2 palettes from an indie brand coming my way. I also got them in a retirement sale, so we'll talk about them when I get them. thank you once again for coming along to follow me on my makeup shenanigans, for joining me in my makeup playtime, and I hope to see you again in a future video, maybe with a little less glitter on my hands. I hope you have a wonderful day wherever you are, and I'll see you again very soon for a new video. Bye-bye.